I just finished watching Slow Horses Season 1. Now, this show is really establishing what the slow horses are, what the show itself is going to be. We know at this point in time there's many more seasons, and we also know that they are based on the books by Mick Herron. And so this first season is essentially the season that matches the first book called Slow Horses. Now, this show does 1,000 things, and it does 1,000 things really well. The beautiful thing, because we are watching this in the US on Apple, is it is a concise 6-episode arc, and these episodes are maybe a little less than an hour. So it's easy to binge, it's easy to move through quickly, but it packs everything in so beautifully, and it's got tons of twists and turns in the best way. So this season is all, of course, about the slow horses. So who are these slow horses? We're going to kind of look at the first season briefly in terms of like a few of the main buckets, but the main one is the slow horses. Now, the slow horses are so called slow horses, of course, because they are based out of Slough House. You get it, right? Slow horses, Slough House. I think you got it, right? Once we establish that and can move on, this is fine. But who really are these guys? So it's really important to know, and you find out very quickly, that the slow horses are the rejects from mainstream MI5. And this is so fictional on next level cleverness, right? The fun of this story and the fun of the book certainly, and the way the TV shows play out, is that we get to watch a bunch of reject spies still kind of be somewhat in the fold. From what I understand, this is not something that happens in real life, but it is the case here. Now, really quick overview, if MI5 does not land immediately. James Bond was essentially MI6. MI6 was the special intelligence for international affairs for the UK. MI5 is home affairs, or what happens internal to the UK. So we've got MI5, the mainstream MI5, and then we got the slow horses, who are the rejects from MI5 put into Slough House. And that's the catalyst, the kicking off point. Who are these people for how this season comes to life? The plot of this season is great, but let's stick with the slow horses for a second. So really quickly early on, we discover that our main catalyst for these stories is in the person of River Cartwright. And River Cartwright, of course, played by the really awesome, fun, engaging, totally charming, thoroughly delightful, and really great Jack Lowden. This character has such a story, right? His grandfather was a real main linchpin of actual MI5 back in the day. So he's kind of as if, right, kind of like, oh, these people who go to Oxford and Cambridge via Eton, and they're like the next in line for their dynasty. You kind of expect that was gonna be him. But instead, he has had a major fall from grace, and he's gone from major MI5 into Slough House as a slow horse. So we get to see River Cartwright, and we then get to see the kind of real star of the show, who is Jackson Lamb, the character embodied by the absolutely amazing Gary Oldman. Now, Gary Oldman, you have seen in so many things. If you are not part of this world in general, you've probably seen Gary Oldman most famously, so many things. But right, he played Dracula to Winona Ryder's Mina back in Dracula back 30 years ago, back in the day. He also brilliantly played such a different type of spy in the form of George Smiley, who of course was the Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy type of story. And his characterization of that, so different, so completely different, so amazing. In this, he kind of gets to play the flip side of that, where George Smiley was the controlled person who kind of like runs things quietly, contained, never really going to explode. This guy is like what happens if George Smiley totally fell off the rails and completely derailed but never crashed to the point of destruction, right? He is the anti-George Smiley in 1,000 ways. So Jackson Lamb runs Slough House. And in the course of the whole season, you start to be fed how a person like Jackson Lamb ends up in Slough House, ends up leading this group of people, but also ultimately, the exciting thing is he was a great spy during the Cold War, and all of those skills can't leave that container ultimately. He really carries forward anything, and that's a key element of what Slough House essentially also is. We'll come back to that. So we have Jackson Lamb. We also have his like beleaguered underling inside the office in the form of Catherine Standish, played by the ever alluring, rather fascinatingly dowdy in this situation, Saskia Reeves. I remember her in this great movie or TV show with Clive Owen back in the day where they were kind of like incestuous siblings. She's amazing. She's such a great actor. And here you get to see her play kind of like the mousy, dowdy person. Also, we've discovered the character is an alcoholic and how cruel and nasty Jackson Lamb is, kind of taunting her with alcohol throughout because he is such an alcoholic. And this is where all these seeds get planted for how this formerly great spy turns into somewhat of a monster, essentially. So inside Slough House, right, we have at the top end, we have Jackson Lamb and Catherine Standish. We have River Cartwright, who's our really catalyst for this show itself. And his office buddy, his kind of main sidekick in this season, this first season, is Sid, in the form of one of my favorite people ever, Olivia Cooke, I believe is her name. And please forgive me if I don't get it right. But Olivia Cooke, you may recall from, she actually has turned out to star in House of the Dragon. She, with her House of the Dragon star, you may recall that little bantered kind of mini video of a Negroni Spagliato with Prosecco in it. And Olivia Cooke's the one at the end who's like, oh, stunning, right? Oh, stunning. She is Northern warmth and beauty and connection and empathy embodied. And so River Cartwright's main kind of buddy in the show is his office mate Sid in the form of her. Now, we then discover, like, what is her real role in Slough House? And why is she so good and why is she so trusted? Right? These are things we find out very early on. We also find this out while we're watching River Cartwright essentially like sort through trash, right? It's so direct to see how his MI5 career has so literally been turned to trash. And that's the fun of this show. Some things are so on the nose, and some things are allowed to kind of unspool in a very clever, witty way. So also inside Slough House, we got Louisa and Min. They are office mates, and do they kind of have something that starts to develop outside the office? Very fun to see. We also have their third office mate, who's totally the third wheel, in the form of the ever earnest, ever adorable Struan from Scotland, who just wants to have a drink after work and be buddies with his workmates. And is anyone interested? You guess it. So this is like the second floor down maybe. And then on the ground level, rounding out Slough House, we've got the tech whiz in the form of Roddy Ho. This guy is so wrong in 1,000 different ways. And he also totally gets to play into all of these stereotypes that we have about what tech geeks are like, what tech nerds are like, how awkward or kind of in fantasy la la land tech people really are, while still being completely brilliant at what they do, right? So we got Roddy Ho, and also stuck in his office with him, who seems to hate him, is this other character in the form of Jed Malloy, I believe is his name, right? And he's a bit of a thug, and he's a bit of, let's just say he's a bit of a thug. And ultimately, everyone ends up in Slough House because something went very, very wrong with their main career at the park where MI5 is based, where they've ended up at Slough House. So let's talk about who's at the park. Who will you find at the park? The park is led in this season mostly visibly in the form of the second desk, not the first desk, so like second in command, second desk, Diana Taverner. Now, we get Diana Taverner in the gorgeous goddess-like figure of the unflappable, thoroughly unflappable Diana Taverner in Kristin Scott Thomas. Now, she runs with this role. I've seen her in such warm roles, and she's easy to play icy. She's easy to play really warm and lovely too. But where you might see her warm, she is icy determination, truly cutthroat, as the second desk who runs these ops. And that's her kind of role. If first desk is kind of strategy, we get to see first desk as the season progresses in the form of, again, the kind of regal Sophie Okonedo as the thoroughly humorless Ingrid Tierney, who is kind of running the show and making decisions. Diana Taverner is the director of operations, and she runs these ops. And she also then gets to kind of see how all these different elements play. She's the puppeteer, if we want to put it that way. MI5 overall is a puppeteer, but she gets to play the puppeteer. Inside of MI5, we also get to see her weird sidekick, kind of practical director of ops in the form of Webb, the really great Freddie Fox. Shout out to Freddie Fox, and a very special mention of his sister Amelia Fox, who we know from Silent Witness. Freddie Fox thoroughly embodies this kind of repulsive character, really privileged, really smarmy, really gross, always failing up type of character, especially in a young man. We then get to see it with middle-aged men throughout all of these stories for sure. But Freddie Fox does a great job as Webb, known as Spider for his web, of course. And then we see, of course, first desk Ingrid Tierney. And then we also have the dogs. Now, Nick Duffy is the head of the dogs, and the dogs are like the security team or the muscle for MI5. All of these things start to come into play because the main story of this season is a really good one and a really important one. It essentially, we dive really quickly into crazy wackadoodle right-wingers and what they want to do in order to raise awareness that they are not sidelined and what they want matters. And throughout the season, you get to see peppered in where violence is the easy default, where education lapses. I think if we need to round all of this out, you get to watch this in play, and it's so clever, and no one's really 100% right, and no one's 100% wrong. That really is, I think, one of the strongest elements of the show, that you can see things from everyone's perspective, at least through really clear glimpses. And yes, many people are taking all the wrong choices and decisions to get there, but you see where things falter. You see where the kind of path of righteousness has totally gone wrong. You see things where we get to see MI5 going crazy, essentially, and how things fall apart so quickly when people take their own action instead of responding to actually real threats out in the world. So this storyline is really great. It's a right-wing storyline. It's a racist storyline. We have the intrinsic problems of British colonialism and imperialism showing its ugly head still all this time later, because not that much time has really gone by, and how this becomes such a comedy of errors. So the story itself is unfolding with such beautiful twists and turns, and the slow horses become a turning point in the machinations of this weird plot unfolding. And the slow horses ultimately become a problem and become an answer and become a problem and become a bigger answer and a bigger problem, until ultimately, who can possibly save the day? Sure, could MI5 do it? Maybe, maybe not. Of course they could. But will the slow horses save the day? The beauty of this show and this weird creation of a group of people likes the slow horses from Slough House, and everything that is meant to connotate second rate as Slough House, is we get to always walk this fine line of why they weren't really fully kicked out of MI5 and why they've kind of just been demoted. Because on one hand, the slow horses are really, really good at what they do. And on another hand, you see why they failed so spectacularly in their main MI5 careers at the park, right? And so this is this beautiful balance and tension that is just there from start to finish. We get the grotesque characters like Jackson Lamb. We get the ever-beleaguered, always wronged characters like the River Cartwrights and all the other people, of course, who have ended up in Slough House. We get to see abuses of power. We get to see how these things play out. We get to see how allegiances get to switch back and forth. And we get to see how ultimately things land and how you do maybe have to watch your back and never stop watching your back, even when the people you think are on your side or should be on your side may not be on your side. It's too hard to tell sometimes. So this story delivers, and this season really delivers. For a season to plant these seeds, for a season to show up in little glimpses and mirrors into the past of how the actions Jackson Lamb had to take as an elite agent have come to pass, have brought him to this sweary, farting, grotesque mess of a guy. It's awesome to play out. But mostly, we get to see these relationships spark and take fire so easily. We get Gary Oldman and Kristin Scott Thomas having conversations by canals that are just so rich and good, where you see two master actors at the top of their craft letting it flow, right? We get to see Gary Oldman and all of these younger actors take flight, and he gets to toy with them and play with them as that his puppeteer in his own kind of puppet theater. And all of this is absolutely a thumbs up. The acting is great. The characters are great. The story is great. The way it unfolds and the way it is written and told and directed especially is especially great. So if you are a fan of James Bond, you'll thoroughly love these. If you are a fan of the darker, wittier, bantery type of stuff, you'll especially love these type of things. If you're more accustomed to kind of cozy crime, this may push you a little too far, right? If you're really only interested in Agatha Raisin and the Cotswolds and the countrified crime, this is gonna bring you to a different level. But I still think you can't not enjoy it because the mysteries are woven in so beautifully, and we don't stop twisting and turning much the same way that it twists and turns with the ultimate result inside of an Agatha Raisin or something along those lines. So spycraft fans, this is for you. If you ever were a Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy John le Carré fan, this is so up your alley because we've been able to elevate ourselves outside the realm of reality. So we've been able to bring what is essentially cozy about something like crime or murder that is outside the realm of reality. We've been able to inject that into the spy world as well, with a lot of great sweary banter throughout and amazing characterizations. So I give this one 2 thumbs up. Have you seen this yet? What did I miss that you think is worth highlighting? If you haven't seen this yet, is this enough for it to give you your sense of time? And then if you do watch it, come back here and let me know what you thought of it. Did it actually do most of these things? Because if this is the precedent for the rest of the show and more Slow Horses novels coming to life, I can't wait to see more of them.